stand part, and this is debate on clauses 6 to 11. The Honourable Phil Goff.
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. Part 2 is about the membership of the Infrastructure Bank, and it makes the substantive changes that enables New Zealand to become a member of the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. So again, I'd like to talk about why we should become a member of the bank and why we are supporting this. And in that respect, just to touch on some of the comments made by my friend and colleague from the New Zealand First Party about whether this only brings intangible benefits. And I think Fletcher Tabato drew on the analogy that China would have traded with us anyway, we therefore didn't need to have a free trade agreement with China. Well, I'm sorry, that's absolutely wrong. I know New Zealand First opposed that agreement at the time, but it wasn't about intangible benefits. It was about very tangible things in terms of not only removing the tariffs, but actually by making it tariff-free, that meant that you could increase your trade. And it was also maybe not quite as objective, but certainly as strong a factor was the profile that it gave us. China always talked about the 4 firsts, and that was in reflection of the relationship that we had with that country. And that's why our exports went from $2 billion a year to over $10 billion a year. And it's the same thing for this agreement. What would have happened, or what would happen, if New Zealand was the only country in the only substantial country in the Asia-Pacific region that did not participate in this bank? What message would we be sending to our colleagues in the ASEAN region? And the message we would be sending is that we didn't care about their infrastructure needs. We weren't really part of their region. We didn't have an interest in helping them both with the technical assistance this bank will give or with the infrastructure investment assistance. And next time we went along to one of those countries and said to them, okay, we'd really like to develop this relationship, we'd like more students, we'd like more tourism, we'd like to trade more with you, they'd scratch their head and say, is this a country that is really committed to our region? Now they might still buy our products, but they would be less inclined to regard us favourably and to give us the benefit of the doubt at times when a relationship really demands that we need the benefit of the doubt. So I think you can't simply dismiss our involvement and our commitment to the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank as being something that is simply an intangible benefit. The fact of the matter is, the greatest tangible benefit is that if we invest in this bank, along with other countries that are giving the bank much more capital, we will help the development of those countries. They will develop their middle class and their tastes for New Zealand products, and they will buy more products off us. To consider that New Zealand is an isolated island and can act without regard to the global environment within which we are participating is a wrong view, and I believe a naive view. Now, what are the tangible benefits then of becoming a member of the bank, which is what this part of the bill is about? Well, first of all, it is increased economic development in the Asian region and the flow-on benefits that will bring. Every study that has been done, including by other development banks like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, has said that there is a huge lack of capital for investment in infrastructure, and that is holding the region back. If they can get that capital, if they can develop, that makes the whole region better off. It makes it more stable, it makes it more prosperous, and New Zealand benefits. Secondly, it is in support of increased integration of the region. And when we did the international treaty examination at the Select Committee, that was a key point made by officials reporting to us on our national interests as to why we would benefit from participation and membership of the bank. It also augments our existing relationships in the region. For years as Foreign Affairs Minister and Trade Minister, we were actively involved in the region, at ASEAN regional forums, at APEC meetings, and so on. And it is critically important. Our trade, the majority of our trade, flows not now to Europe, but to the Asian region. And if, Mr. Chairman?
I will give the Honourable Phil Goff the call in a second, but I apologise to the members again. I misdescribed the debate. We're now debating part 2, which includes the clauses I mentioned, but also the schedule. And given the size of the schedule, it's a fair proportion of the bill. The Honourable Phil Goff.
Yes. Well, Mr. Speaker, we can indeed talk about the schedule, and I thought we were having a separate debate on the schedule. But okay, so let me address some of those things too, because it is important what is in the schedule. That's the Articles of Agreement. It's 30 out of the 34 pages of the bill. It's therefore pretty critical. But I want to also address the one amendment that the committee made, which was to Clause 9, where we set out there, we deleted Clause 1A under Clause 9, and I want to talk about the reasons for that. Clause 9.1 basically gives Section 19.1 of the Articles of Agreement the force of law in New Zealand. So for a layperson reading this, they might say, well, why would we delete that? What 19.1, Article 19.1 does is that it prohibits members of the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank from imposing restrictions on currencies held or used by the bank. Now, that will still govern our actions anyway, but the advice that the Select Committee was given, Mr. Chairman, was that it was not necessary. This article and the restrictions that it imposes don't need to have effect domestically for us still to be bound by it, so it wasn't necessary for that to be included. And secondly, it would be inconsistent with all of our other agreements with other international financial institutions if we were to include that clause. So not too much should be read into the fact that clause has been taken out. It's simply that it wasn't necessary and it would have been inconsistent. Can I come now to the schedule of the bill, which is really important. That, first of all, sets out, Mr. Chairman, the purpose of the bill, which is to foster sustainable economic development, to create wealth and improve infrastructure connectivity in Asia by investing in infrastructure and other productive sectors. And also, I think the second factor is also significant, to promote regional cooperation and partnership in addressing developmental challenges. So that sets out clearly what the purpose of this bank is and why we would want to be a member of it. It makes it clear that membership is open to members of the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, that is the Asian Development Bank as we know it. It talks about the amount of authorised capital stock that the bank shall have, and the sum set out under Article 4 is some 100 billion United States dollars. 100 billion United States dollars. So what that gives us is a sense of the size of this bank and the significance that it will have in achieving the purpose for which it is set out. We are investing in this bank, remember, because the Asian Development Bank and the World Bank was not meeting the unmet demand in the Asian region for investment in infrastructure, and that $100 billion is clearly large enough to make a difference. It sets out the way in which we make our subscription to the organisation, which is 5 instalments of 20% each of the amount that we have to pay. Mr. Chairman, that represents 18.4 million US dollars a year. So it's a significant sum we're contributing, but compared to the larger countries like the 30 billion that China is putting in, it is relatively small, but symbolically it's important, and that is deemed to be our fair contribution. Article 13 sets out the operating principles, and I think that's important, that the bank shall be bound by sound banking principles. if this bank was not going to operate according to those principles, and if we hadn't have been involved in the negotiation and we weren't confident in that, then we wouldn't be making this investment. So that's also pretty important, Mr. Speaker. I want to just touch on, I think, one other section, if I can find it. That is in terms of the election of the president of the bank, which is really important. It sets out the principle that the election should be by an open, transparent and merit-based process. If we need to have confidence in the way that this bank operates, it needs to operate according to best international practice. So, Mr. Speaker, I think having the Articles of Agreement in front of us can give us confidence in it, and we should continue to support this bill.